The account balance reads 94,200. You have been at this for 3 years. Automated transfers, consistent contributions, the same deliberate financial behavior month after month. You have not touched the account. You have not deviated from the plan. And for 3 years, the consistency has been almost automatic. Something you set up and let run without much drama. But something is different now. The 100,000 line is visible for the first time. Not abstract, not a someday number. An actual arithmetic reality 6 months away at your current contribution rate, maybe 4 if the market cooperates. You can see it. And something in you, something you cannot quite name, has started to feel different about the whole thing. You are not sure when it started, sometime in the last 2 months. A purchase you did not plan that you cannot fully explain in hindsight. A month where the contribution felt harder to make than it had in 3 years of making it easily. A conversation with your partner about money that surfaced a friction that had not been there before. Nothing catastrophic, nothing dramatic, just a quiet, almost invisible pattern of disruption arriving at the exact moment the disruption should be least present. The 100,000 line is visible, and something is pulling you away from it. My name is Nick, and I spend a genuinely unreasonable amount of time thinking about why people do not build the financial lives they are clearly capable of building. Specifically, the moments where capable, consistent, deliberate people stop or slow or undo at the exact threshold where everything they have been working toward is about to become real. If you have ever gotten inexplicably close to a major financial milestone and felt something shift in ways you could not explain, hit subscribe, because today we are going inside the 3 specific psychological patterns that cause most people to sabotage themselves right before their first $100,000. And I will tell you right now what the 3 patterns are. The fear of arrival, the identity disruption at the threshold, and the spotlight anxiety. 3 patterns. All of them psychological. None of them about money. All of them about what happens to a person when the abstract finally becomes the real. Before we go into each one, let me tell you what is not causing this. It is not weakness. It is not a lack of discipline or commitment or desire. It is not evidence that you are not cut out for this. The people who experience this sabotage pattern are not, in most cases, the financially irresponsible or the uncommitted. They are, in most cases, the people who have been the most consistent, who have built the most deliberately, and who are closest to the first real proof that what they are building is going to work. The sabotage happens near the finish line because the finish line is where the psychology changes. Not earlier. Not when the account was at 12,000 and the goal felt abstract and far. At a 92,000 and 87,000 and 96,000, right at the edge of the thing becoming undeniable. Let me introduce you to 2 people. Alex and Morgan started investing the same month 4 years ago. Same income bracket, similar expenses, similar starting points. Both automated their contributions from the beginning. Both stayed consistent through the first year and the second and the third. By month 40, Alex is at 91,000 and Morgan is at 88,000. Both of them are within reach of the same milestone. Both of them are about to have completely different experiences of the final stretch. Not because of the market, not because of income changes, because one of them understands what is about to happen psychologically and the other does not. Here is what happens to Morgan. Month 41, Morgan's car needs a repair, not a catastrophic repair. A $2,400 repair. Morgan has an emergency fund that can cover it. Morgan takes the money from the investment account instead. First time in 4 years. The account drops to 85,200. Month 43, Morgan reduces the monthly contribution by half. Not for a specific reason, just a vague sense that there are other things the money could be doing right now. The account grows more slowly. Month 46, Morgan's partner suggests a vacation. A real vacation, the kind they had been deferring for years. Morgan says yes immediately. The cost is $6,800. It goes on a credit card. By month 48, Morgan's account is at 84,000, lower than it was 8 months ago. The 100,000 line, which was 4 months away, is now a year away. The 3 years of consistency have been partially undone in 8 months. And Morgan cannot fully explain what happened. Here is what is different about Alex. Alex also felt the shift at a 91,000, the same vague restlessness, the same inexplicable pull toward spending that had not been present before, the same friction in conversations about money that had always been easy. But Alex had a name for what was happening, and named things can be navigated. Let us go through the 3 patterns. Pattern number 1, the fear of arrival. The 100,000 milestone is not just a number, it is a threshold. And thresholds have a specific psychology that the space below them does not have. Below the threshold, the financial journey has a quality that is, in its own way, comfortable. You are working toward something. You are in the process. The identity of someone building toward a goal is familiar and sustainable. There is always more to do. Always a next step. The not yet state has a specific shelter in it. The shelter of the person who is on the way rather than the person who has arrived. When the threshold comes into view, when the 100,000 line becomes visible and near and real, something changes in the psychology of the journey. The arrival is no longer abstract, it is specific and imminent. And the arrival, for reasons that researchers in the psychology of goal completion have studied carefully, triggers a specific kind of anxiety that the approach does not. Psychologist Tal Ben-Shahar named the arrival fallacy, the phenomenon where we expect that reaching a major goal will produce the lasting happiness and satisfaction we imagined it would. But there is a less discussed reverse of this dynamic that operates in the financial space. Some people do not fear arriving and finding it empty. They fear arriving and finding it real. The 100,000 account means something. It means the plan works. It means the consistency pays off. It means the sacrifice had a point. And all of those meanings are genuinely positive. But they also mean something else. They mean there is no longer a comfortable reason to remain in the building toward phase. The arrival requires a new identity. The person who has built something real rather than the person who is building toward something real. And that identity shift, as we discussed in the video about why people get weird when you build wealth, carries its own specific anxiety. Some people unconsciously slow down before a major milestone because slowing down extends the comfortable not yet state. The restlessness, the unplanned purchase, the contribution pause, these are not random acts of financial irresponsibility. They are the specific behaviors of someone unconsciously managing the pace of an arrival they are not fully prepared for. Alex recognized this. At a 91,000, when the restlessness arrived, Alex named it, this is arrival anxiety. This is the approach to the threshold. And instead of acting on the restlessness, instead of letting it translate into a purchase or a pause, Alex wrote down exactly what the 100,000 milestone actually meant. Specifically, what would be different? What would stay the same? What the arrival actually looked like in concrete daily terms. The concreteness was the antidote to the anxiety. The fear of arrival is almost always a fear of the abstract, of the imagined implications of arriving rather than the actual ones. When Alex made the arrival specific and ordinary, an account balance, a monthly contribution that continues, a daily life that looks almost exactly the same as it did at due 91,000, the anxiety lost most of its power. Morgan, 18 months after the disruption, is back to 92,000. The momentum lost in those 8 months is real. The compounding that did not happen in those months is real. But more importantly, the mechanism has not been named. The next threshold, no 150,000, 200,000, will arrive with the same 3 patterns operating the same way, unless something changes. Here is the structural response to each pattern. For arrival anxiety, make the arrival ordinary before it arrives. Write down in specific concrete terms what the 100,000 milestone actually looks like in daily life. Not the imagined significance of it, the actual reality. An account balance, a monthly contribution that continues. A daily life that is not dramatically different from the day before the milestone. The arrival is only frightening when it is abstract. Concreteness removes most of the anxiety. For identity disruption, do the identity work before the milestone, not after. Ask the specific question, who am I becoming, and what does that require me to believe about myself? The transition from the person who is building toward financial security to the person who has it does not require the erasure of where you came from. It requires the honest acceptance of where you are going. That acceptance is a choice. Make it deliberately before the threshold forces it. For spotlight anxiety, have the conversations before the milestone arrives. The feared social responses are almost always less severe than the anticipated ones. The anticipatory uncertainty is what powers the anxiety. Replacing uncertainty with an actual conversation with the partner, the family member, the friend, removes most of the anxiety's fuel. The real response is almost always more manageable than the imagined one. Alex crossed 100,000 in month 44. Not with a celebration, not with a dramatic announcement. Just a Tuesday where the account crossed the line and Alex noted it, and the automated transfer continued on schedule. The arrival was ordinary because Alex had made it ordinary before it arrived. The account did not stop at 100,000 a day. The contribution did not pause. The identity that had been quietly revised before the threshold was not disrupted by the crossing of it. The social conversations that had been had beforehand meant the milestone arrived without the anticipated social freight. The first 100,000 is the hardest, not just because of the compounding math, though the math is real, and the first 100,000 genuinely does take longer to build than subsequent hundreds, because the compounding base is smaller. It is also the hardest because it is the first time the abstract becomes real, the first time the plan works, the first time the identity has to shift to accommodate the proof that the building is actually happening. The mechanism that derails most people at this threshold is not a lack of discipline or commitment or financial intelligence. It is the specific, predictable psychology of approaching a significant identity threshold without the names for what is happening. You now have the names. The arrival anxiety is the fear of the specific and imminent rather than the abstract and eventual. Make the arrival ordinary before it arrives. The identity disruption is the turbulence of becoming someone whose financial reality no longer matches the financial identity that carried you here. Do the identity work before the threshold forces it. The spotlight anxiety is the fear of the anticipated social visibility of the achievement. Have the conversations before the milestone removes the option of not having them. 3 patterns. 3 structural responses. None of them require ongoing willpower. All of them require one deliberate act made before the mechanism has the chance to operate. The account is at 94,200. The 100,000 line is visible. And now, for the first time, you know what the shift you are feeling actually is. It is not weakness. It is not irresponsibility. It is not a sign that you are not cut out for this. It is the predictable, documented, navigable psychology of approaching the first major financial threshold of your life. Navigate it. The math on the other side is worth it. I am not a financial advisor, and none of this is financial advice. These are just patterns I have watched play out with real numbers and real people attached. Take what is useful and leave the rest. If this names something you have been experiencing in your own wealth building journey, drop a comment and tell me which of the 3 patterns you recognize most clearly. I actually read every single one. And if you want to see the video on why most high earners still feel broke despite everything they earn, it is right there on your screen. That one and this one are the same conversation from 2 different angles. I will see you in it. Some forms of this are conscious. The person who knows that reaching 100,000 will create uncomfortable conversations with family members who are struggling financially. The person who knows that their friend group will respond to the milestone with the specific dynamics we described in the social cost video. The person who knows that their partner will respond to the milestone with new financial expectations that feel more pressure than celebration. Some forms are unconscious. The person who slows down without knowing why, whose deceleration is the behavioral expression of a social anxiety that has never been fully named. The pull toward a large purchase is sometimes the specific behavior of someone who wants to stay below the threshold of visibility, who wants to maintain the social camouflage of someone who does not yet have significant assets. Morgan's specific spotlight anxiety was about family. A family context where financial success was associated with distance, with people who left and moved on and stopped being fully present in the family dynamic. The 100,000 milestone in Morgan's unconscious financial architecture was the line beyond which you became the family member who was doing better and therefore less present. The slowing down was a way of not crossing that line. Morgan had never articulated this. The vacation and the car repair and the contribution pause were not consciously motivated by this fear. But the fear was operating, and it found its expression in behaviors that looked financially irrational from the outside and felt inexplicably right in the moment. Alex also had a version of the spotlight anxiety, the specific concern about a partner who might respond to the 100,000 milestone with new financial expectations that felt more like pressure than celebration. Alex addressed this directly, not with a presentation about the milestone, but with a genuine conversation about what it meant and what it did not mean, what would change about the financial life, and what would stay the same. Before the milestone arrived, the conversation reduced the spotlight anxiety because it removed the anticipatory uncertainty. The feared response was replaced by a real response. And the real response, as it turned out, was much less threatening than the feared one. Here is the research anchor for everything we have covered. The psychology of goal proximity, the specific changes in behavior and motivation that occur as people approach rather than recede from a significant goal, has been documented consistently. Research published in the Journal of Marketing Research found that goal proximity produces what researchers call the small area hypothesis, the counterintuitive finding that people are more likely to deviate from a goal when they are close to it than when they are far from it. Not less likely, more. The proximity creates a specific psychological pressure that distance does not. The identity economics research of Akerlof and Cranton, which we have referenced in other videos on this channel, documents how identity transitions, even positive ones, produce genuine psychological turbulence. The 100,000 threshold is an identity transition. The turbulence is not a sign of weakness. It is a predictable feature of the transition. And the spotlight effect research, documented by Thomas Jelovich and others, shows consistently that people overestimate how much others notice and judge their behavior and circumstances. The spotlight is less bright than the person crossing the threshold believes it to be. The visibility is more manageable. The judgment is less severe. But the anxiety of the anticipated spotlight is real and it produces real behavior. Now here is the gut check I want you to sit with for 60 seconds before we continue. Think about the last time you were close to a financial milestone and something disrupted your approach. Not a legitimate external disruption, a job loss, a medical expense, a genuine emergency. A disruption that, if you are honest with yourself, did not have to happen the way it happened. The purchase that could have waited. The pause that was not strictly necessary. The conflict that surfaced at a financially convenient moment. Name it honestly. We will come back to it. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The three patterns, arrival anxiety, identity disruption, and spotlight anxiety, do not only operate at the 100,000 threshold. They operate at every major financial milestone. The person who sabotages at $100 without understanding the mechanism will sabotage again at $250 and again at 500,000. The threshold changes. The psychology does not. Understanding the mechanism at 100,000, naming it, seeing it, building the structural response to it, is not just about the first 100,000. It is about every threshold that comes after it. Morgan never named the arrival anxiety. It operated invisibly. And the purchase and the contribution pause and the vacation were its expression. Pattern number 2. The identity disruption at the threshold. This is the deepest of the three patterns and the one that operates most invisibly. It is not about the money. It is about who the person understands themselves to be. Here is the mechanism. Most people who begin building wealth carry a specific financial identity, a set of beliefs about what kind of person they are economically, what their relationship to money is, and where they fit in the financial world. This identity was formed long before the investment account was opened. It was shaped by family financial context, early money experiences, the financial identity of the peer group, and the accumulated narrative of a person's financial life up to the moment they decided to start building deliberately. For many people beginning the wealth building journey, this identity contains a specific element. I am not someone who has significant financial assets, not because they are lazy or uncommitted, because they have never had them. The identity is accurate, it reflects a real history, but it is also the identity that the 100,000 milestone will permanently disrupt. When the account reaches 100,000, the identity that carried the person through the journey is no longer accurate. The person who does not have significant financial assets is becoming the person who does. And identity transitions, as research in identity economics consistently documents, produce real psychological turbulence, even when they are transitions towards something better. The specific form this identity disruption takes at the 100,000 threshold varies by person. For some people, it looks like the imposter syndrome of someone who feels their financial success is not real or not deserved or not stable. For some people, it looks like the sudden surfacing of a belief, usually inherited from family context, that people like them do not build wealth, and that arriving at 100,000 will expose them to some form of consequence they cannot fully name. For some people, it looks like the specific anxiety of no longer having the financial struggle as an identity anchor. The person who has built their sense of themselves around being someone who works hard and has little, suddenly approaching a moment when the having little part is no longer true. Morgan's family did not have significant financial assets. Nobody in Morgan's immediate context had crossed a 100,000 investment milestone. The financial identity that Morgan carried into the building journey was, I am not someone from that world. And at 88,000 with the milestone approaching, that identity began to create specific friction, not loudly, not consciously, just quietly enough to produce the behaviors that slowed the approach. Alex came from a similar background, the same family financial context, the same inherited identity. But Alex had spent time specifically examining the identity before the milestone approached, asking directly, who am I becoming, and what does that require me to believe about myself that I have not yet fully accepted? The answer required some honest internal work, not dramatic work, just the specific work of deciding that the new identity, the person who has built something real, was not a betrayal of where Alex came from, was not an erasure of the struggle, was not a departure from the people and the context that shaped Alex. Was just the next true thing about who Alex was becoming. That internal work happened before the milestone, not after it, which meant the identity disruption did not produce disruptive behavior. It produced quiet recognition and continued consistency. Pattern number 3, the spotlight anxiety. This one operates in the social dimension at the intersection of the financial milestone and the person's relationships and community. And it is the one that most often looks like something else entirely. Here is the mechanism. The 100,000 milestone is significant not just internally but socially. It is a threshold that most people in most social contexts have not crossed. Crossing it means something in the relational world. It creates a new financial reality that others can perceive. That changes the implicit financial mapping of the relationship network, and that exposes the person to new forms of attention, expectation, and judgment that the pre-milestone state did not require them to navigate. The spotlight anxiety is the specific fear of that new visibility, not the spotlight of celebration, not the fear of being praised or acknowledged for the achievement. The spotlight of exposure, the fear that crossing the threshold will create expectations that cannot be met, judgments that cannot be managed, or relationship dynamics that cannot be maintained in the new financial reality.